Hello and welcome back to Imagination Mansion. Welcome back to my channel. This is a very different angle than what I usually work at, but I finally actually have like an actual proper tripod. Still using my smartphone, but it's got a good enough camera, so there's no point forking out for a big camera that I don't know how to use when I've got my smartphone right here and it's a decent quality. So, something new that you can probably see in the back of me, I have bought myself a PC. Didn't know it came with the flashing lights, but it's very pretty, so I'm very happy about that. So, in this video I thought I'd talk about sort of like how my collection of books, how I'm working through it, I suppose. So I guess this would be some sort of like update. And sort of what I've been doing, because I haven't made a video in a while, but at the same time I'm not going to push myself to try and make any kind of schedule because I'm doing this for fun. So this isn't, you know, I'm not doing this as like my paid career or anything like that, so I don't have to worry about like, oh, I have to upload constantly to keep having an income of money or anything like that. Like, I don't think I qualify for the monetization thing, so I'm not gonna worry about any of that. And also just like, okay, I just started wearing. Also, yeah, I'm just not going to put that stress on myself because you see all sorts of people who do YouTube, they're getting burnt out and all this kind of stuff, and they're getting pressure to constantly stick to an upload schedule and all this kind of stuff. And every time I've tried, it's just fallen apart. So, you know, I know who I am, I know what I'm like, so I'm just going to upload as and when, and hope that you guys enjoy the videos when they do appear. So, with that, I will get on with the video. Right, as you can see from sort of like the corner of the screen, I have decided to compile all the books that I've read or am reading at the moment from my collection of books. As I said, I would be trying to read what I have instead of like just grabbing things from elsewhere when I've got books at home. So, without further ado, we're gonna start with some manga because I read a lot of manga, I follow a lot of series, I'm trying to complete some of them, especially the ones that I've already read online, like Assassination Classroom. I've collected all of that now because I've read it all online. The Grey Man, I'm going to be collecting as that's coming out because that is still ongoing. Tokyo Ghoul I've got all of, like the original Tokyo Ghoul, but I haven't finished reading that one yet, but I am getting there. So, let's get to it. So first up we have quite a childish one, but that's fine. I don't think that books, obviously they have age ratings when you're younger, but I think once you're a certain age you can read whatever you want. So we have Pokemon Sword and Shield, because this is the game that I have. I have Pokemon Sword and Shield, and honestly, it's just a cute story, honestly. It's very quick to read. I have 5 of the volumes at the moment, and it's just an easy story. This is my boy here. I am a Grookey fan. Got my Rillaboom, which is like the final evolution. And yeah, so there's that one. Next up is Laid Back Camp. So I have watched the entire anime for this, both seasons, and the film, which apparently not everyone liked, but I loved it. It's very, very cozy. I've unfortunately only got 2 volumes of this, which is weirdly volume 1 and volume 7, because they're really weird about when they're back in print and stuff like that, as it always is with, if anyone collects manga in the UK, you kind of know what it's like, where it goes through a cycle of which editions are being printed at which point, which volumes, sorry, are being printed at which point, and but yeah, it's just cozy. It's about girls going camping. As someone who has been camping, at least in the UK, I know it's not, at least UK camping is not as idealised as this. You know, it's a lot of having to pack up your tent in the middle of the night because it's raining so hard that the field is turning into a pond. But it is very cozy and it's very sweet as well. Like, it's very like wholesome. There's no drama, at least in terms of like, there's no like people drama, you know, it's not people falling out or, you know, people not talking to each other. There's no romance in it either, so there's no drama on that side, and it's just a good old cozy time. So that's that one. Next up is one of the ones that I have read, and I read when I was younger, and I've also finished the anime, which I know is slightly different, at least in the ending. It's Ouran High School Host Club. It's a classic. It's very cheesy, quite funny. And yeah, got that one. The next one I read is, what else I could put it? Organize it a little differently, there we go. Is Nichijou, which is a comedy. It's just really eccentric, bizarre comedy. See that, and it's just kind of ridiculous, but that's kind of its appeal. Is it's ridiculous. None of this would happen in real life, which is funny because it's called My Ordinary Life, and that's kind of, I think, the joke. Next up isn't a manga, but is still comic, which is Fangs by Sarah Anderson, and it's basically just a comic about the relationship between a werewolf and a vampire, and it's very sweet, very funny, and I love it. So that one. And also Black and Red, which is very, very stylistic. Next up is this, which is Campaigns and Companions, and it's basically just a series of skits about animals playing D&D and about the choices that they would make. Some of them are a bit gross, but overall it's just kind of cute and funny, and obviously quite thin, so it's quite an easy read. It did not, it took me about 5-10 minutes to read this, but I will absolutely be rereading this over and over again, so it's worth it. And next up is a light novel, which is The Long, Long Goodbye of the Last Bookstore. So this one is very sweet. It's very bittersweet, and it's basically the story of this bookstore is closing down, and this guy comes in and he's reuniting books with the people they quote unquote belong to, and it's very, very bittersweet, but also very, very, I want to just say like soft and comforting, and you know, you do really believe that like every book has an owner almost, and I very much loved this one. Okay, next up is, they're in just sort of like an assorted, some are fiction, some are non-fiction, so I'll just go through these. So first up we have a children's book, which is The Valley of Lost Secrets by Leslie Parr, which is this one, and it's just very realistic, lovely, and not too high stakes, which at the moment I enjoy. I think that is a thing, when you get more like stressed and tired, you're just like, I don't want severe issues in the books that I'm reading, unless it's like full-on fantasy and would never happen in real life. So it's basically, I'll just read the blurb. So it's September 1939. When Jimmy is evacuated to a small village in Wales, it couldn't be more different than London. Green, quiet, and full of strangers, he instantly feels out of place. But then he finds a skull hidden in a tree, and suddenly the valley is much more frightening than the war. Who can Jimmy trust? His brother is too little, his best friend has changed. Finding an ally in someone he never expects, they set out together to uncover the secrets that lie with the skull. What they discover will change Jimmy and the village forever. And it is a very good book. It's definitely that sort of like coming of age of like, oh, the people who I thought were my friends aren't my friends anymore, and the people that I was kind of like dismissive of, they're the ones that will have your back, kind of. And I think I loved that about this as well. And yeah, it's just some kids finding this discovery and going like, what the heck is this? And how that changes them, and what they do with that information, and how they look for the information, and how they come to the conclusion that they do. And it's just a brilliant book. So next up is a non-fiction, and it's a bit of a different one, and that is Rebel Witch by Kelly Ann Maddox. And it's just basically about how there's so many rules that people try and put into sort of like witchcraft and that kind of thing, and how it's like, none of that matters. You do what you want to do. It is yours. You're the one that has to live with it. You're the ones that has to live with like with the choices that you make and stuff like that, to make sure it's as personal to you as possible. And she's very, very good at that. And I also follow her YouTube channel as well. I have quite a few witchcraft books for someone who doesn't actually physically practice witchcraft. What is it they call people like that? An armchair wizard? It's like, I read the books, but I don't actually do the thing. But I just find the topic so fascinating. So yeah, there's that one. Next up is Life 3.0, Being Human in the Age of Artificial Intelligence by Max Tegmark. I always get that the wrong way around. But it was a very, very well written book about AI, about how, yes, there are some dangers around AI and how you do have to be careful, but how you can think of that in a logical way, and the way that as long as we keep an eye on things and we regulate things properly, that it can help us in our daily life. And it goes on to like the questions of like morality and consciousness and stuff, which did give me a bit of an existential crisis, but I absolutely think that they're conversations that we need to have when we're talking about this topic. Is that one? It's whirring again. It is just downloading stuff in the background, so it will just occasionally just whir, because I finally actually got virus protection on it, so I now feel comfortable actually downloading things. It's also going a bit dark, so I will turn the light on. Don't think it did that much, but I tried. Okay, next up we have Physics of the Future by Michio Kaku. So this is another well-written book, and I love Michio Kaku because he is so excited about everything science that it's that childlike wonder, and he just never lost it, and it's honestly just so wonderful to read. This is, however, a bit out of date because it was published in 2012, and it does hurt my heart a little bit sometimes, because in it he does talk a bit about how communities will come more together, there'll be more of a worldwide nation instead of, you know, and I'm like, after all the stuff that's kind of like happened recently with places becoming even more fragmented and people turning even more against each other, honestly, it's just one of those things where I'm like, I hope he's not too disheartened and I hope he's okay. But it was fascinating to hear about the things that he thinks we'll have in 100 years and what technology is out there to be sort of like built upon and worked on. So it was absolutely still an interesting read, and I think those things are still things that could work. It was just slightly disheartening the way that we've gone backwards in some places since 2012. Next up is the one that I said I was reading in, was it the last video? It was in the last video or a couple of videos ago, which is Other Lands by Thomas Halliday. and this was very, very good. It did throw me a bit that they were going backwards in time, but it's still a very, very fascinating read. And if you're interested in biology or ecology or any of that, it's absolutely a wonderful book. And it does absolutely touch, like sort of in like the last section, it does touch upon sort of like climate change and all that kind of stuff. But it's just great. He's written it so well that you literally feel like you're there, like when he's talking about these prehistoric places, and it's just a great book. Absolutely recommend. So next up we have A Wood of One's Own by Ruth Pavey. That's this one. And it's literally about a woman who buys a wood and is trying to restore it in some way or another, and about how there are struggles with that, especially if you're not someone who's completely plant savvy like she isn't. She's from the city, but she is trying her best to like cobble this place together and to work with nature instead of against it. And I just loved it. It's sort of like half nature documentary, half biography, but I think that absolutely works in its favor, because it is just about this one plot of land and what she's trying to do to sort of like bring it back to life instead of the overgrown kind of like bramble pit that it was when she bought it. So it's that one. Next up, we have Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. I loved this book, and I didn't think I could love mushrooms more than I already did, but apparently I could. It's so interesting how basically like half of the reason why the plants grow the way they grow and they work the way they work is because of the fungus that is everywhere, and just how ingenious it is and how it kind of can almost think for itself. Though in the book he does warn about like anthropomorphizing, because it's completely different, but it's just such a wonderful read, and you discover stuff about it that just seems kind of, you wouldn't have even thought was a thing. But yeah, it's wonderful, and my edition has sprayed edges, which is also very nice. But that's that one. So up next we've got some fiction. So we have Guild by Raven Kennedy, which is from the Plated Prisoner series, and this is the first one. So it's basically the story of King Midas, but kind of taken out of the Greek mythos and put into its own world, at least from what I can gather. And it's basically the story of this girl who has basically been gilded in gold, which is the title, and she's basically kept in a cage, and she's basically like the favourite, they call it saddle, but it's basically like the favourite concubine kind of thing. And it's quite simply written, I will say that. Like, it's not very grand in its writing style or anything like that, but the story and the characters are and it's just interesting. And so I will absolutely be getting the sequels, at least the next one, to see where the story goes, because it was a very, very fascinating read, and both King Midas and the main character Oren are both very interesting characters. There's that one. And next up we have Out of the Silent Planet by C.S. Lewis. So this is the guy that wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, and he also has written a cosmic trilogy, which is science fiction, and it's so old sci-fi, and I love it so much. Like, two of my other favourite sci-fi writers are H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, so this is absolutely up my alley, like, and it's just so fascinating. And it's basically following, like, similar to the idea of H.G. Wells, it's the idea of people living on Mars, as in like a different species living on Mars, and how this one guy is taken there because he's being offered, they think, as a sacrifice. And it's very, very interesting the way that they spin how Earth is seen from the outside, like from other places. And just the lore is incredible. And to be fair, from the guy who makes the overarching lore of Chronicles of Narnia, it is to be expected that he had written something as like poetic and in-depth and thought-provoking as this. So next up we have the one that I was reading with other lands in the other video. I did just kind of like dump them on a pile, I'm not gonna lie. So if it seems a bit out of order, like I didn't read them in this order, so apologies if that's a bit confusing. But the next up is Paradise Lost by John Milton. It's obviously very archaic, but it is a very poetic retelling of like the fall of man and the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve and all that kind of stuff. And it's just very, it was literally, I found myself being so like enthralled in the story, even though I know the story quite well, at least, you know, the story of Genesis and all that kind of stuff quite well, because I did grow up in a small town, quite Christian. I went to a Christian school, so I do know the story quite well, but it's just such a poetic and moving retelling of it that, yeah, it's, I did get tripped up a couple of times because, like I said, it is quite old, but I did enjoy it. Okay, and next up I have two books that I am currently reading at the moment. So first up is Reach for the Stars, 1996 to 2006, Fame, Fallout and Pop's Final Party by Michael Cragg. So this was my era of music. I still absolutely listen to most of the bands listed in here, which features people like Steps, who are my absolute favourite, Sugar Babes, S Club 7, Boyzone. Starts out with the Spice Girls, because that's kind of what kicked everything off. There are some bands in here that I didn't listen to, like I never listened to Five. I was aware of them, but I was absolutely like, I was unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but I was a Backstreet Boys kid, still am. And they do kind of like list those as like someone they were kind of competing with, at least in the music sphere at the time. But yeah, and then it sort of like finishes with like the era of X Factor and how that started kicking people into fame and stuff like that, and how that was kind of like the next stage. So I'm currently on the Steps section. As you can see, I'm not that way through, though I have just kind of been like flicking through it and flicking to like different sections, because it also features Busted, who are another fave of mine, not gonna lie. Sorry McFly, I was more of a Busted girl, but that's that one. And secondly, I have taken the cover off this, so we'll just go grab it, which is The Lost Rainforests of Britain by Guy Shrubsole, which absolutely sounds like the kind of book a guy called Guy Shrubsole should be writing. And I am this far through at the moment. Also, I just love the colour of this. But it's very, very interesting. So it's basically about the realm of the temperate rainforest instead of the hot rainforest / tropical rainforest, I suppose would be the technical term. And the fact that we do actually have rainforests in Britain. I was kind of aware of this because I live in the Lake District, which is one of the places that houses some of these rainforests. But it is a very, very interesting read. And I got this a while ago, as can be proven by the fact that it came out in paperback like a month ago. And hardbacks usually stay in print for about 6 months to a year before the paperback comes out. So I've had this one a while, but since, you know, like I said, the paperback came out, I was like, I should probably read it. And it is very interesting so far. So that is a roundup of what I have been reading recently, what I've been doing recently. Bit of a life update with the big beefy PC behind me. And yeah, hope you're having a good time. If you like this, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, because I will be periodically making new videos, and because they're not in a schedule, hit that notification bell and then you will get pinged when my video turns up. I'll see you next time.